Chapter 18, 74 Days After. It took us less than half an hour to figure out that one, because we had never gigged before, we had never noticed we didn't own gigging essentials like cases to transport our equipment, and two, Rabbit's car was 10 sizes too small to fit everything in it, which meant that three, we'd have to load the stuff Tetris style, but either way, four, we'd have to make at least one more trip than we'd planned for, so five, we were running late for Isaac's party before we even began getting ready. We loaded Maddie's stuff in the car first, along with whatever parts of the PA system we could fit. Then we moved my bass drum to the front passenger side and I seatbelted it in. Rabbit had directions to the house and figured Isaac would help him unload the car while Maddie and I finished packing up the rest of the equipment. Since Isaac worked at a club setting up the stage, he'd be able to unpack the gear and get things organized while Rabbit came back for the second carload. Handsome, I told Beckett when he showed up around 5. He sported a charcoal pinstripe suit, the pink and black paisley bow tie my parents gave him for 8th grade graduation, and black high tops. And he'd done something to his hair, something that made it a little bit crispy. Is not too much? He asked, and I said, absolutely not. He kissed me on the cheek. Thanks, Callie. And then I thought of Jay and that other boy kissing, and my heart plummeted. Beckett looked around the basement, at the half-packed equipment and the power strips strewn across the floor, at the cymbals, the tom-toms, the snare drums, and the stands. Well, look at this shit show. Well, this looks like a shit show, he said. That's helpful. Maddie stood at the top of the stairs, and she threw an empty cardboard box at us. Keep at it, she said, and then disappeared. It'll be fine, I told him. It'll be fine. Rabbit showed back up around 6, just an hour before we were supposed to start playing, but the three of us had packed up the rest of the gear by then, and we were waiting on the curb when he pulled up. I'm impressed, he said. Don't be, I replied. You're going to have to make one more trip after this. There's no way we're all fitting in that car with the rest of this stuff. Beckett left with Rabbit to help unload the equipment at the house, and then he planned to come back with Rabbit's Volvo to pick up Maddie and me while Rabbit finished setting up the stage with Isaac. After they left, Maddie and I went inside to take another look around and make sure we hadn't forgotten anything, and then we changed into the dresses she'd picked for us to wear to the party. Hers was short and black, with a million little straps crisscrossing down the back. She pulled on her black ankle boots, immediately transforming her look into rocker chic. Then she told me my dress was hanging on the back of the bathroom door. She'd chosen me a strapless navy blue one with an empire waist and a loose flowy skirt, which would work well since I had to sit with my legs splayed open while I played the drums. It was shorter than any dress I'd ever worn, which had me worried, but when I pulled it on and looked in the mirror, I knew it was exactly what I was supposed to wear for our first gig. It's good, right? She asked when I came out of the bathroom and she checked me out. It's perfect, I told her, and she said, I thought so. Then she went to the fridge, an energy drink for her and a bottle of water for me, and we crashed on the couch while we waited for Beck to come back for us. It's going to be a good party, right? She asked hesitantly. A great party, I told her, no questions asked. Are you sure he said 150 people? There's no way he has that many friends. The kid doesn't even really live here. But that's what we want. We want a lot of people there, I said, trying to sound convincing. I'm worried we won't be good enough, that all this work has been for nothing, she admitted. Are you kidding? We're ready, I told her. We're absolutely ready for this. I had my bag of drumsticks at my feet, and I reached down and counted them. Again, I only used wood sticks, Vic Firth's, and that bag was the one thing that actually made me feel like I belonged on a stage in a real show. You don't know this yet, my dad had told me when he came home after work with the bag. A gift, he said, just because. But drumsticks break and fly out of your hands when you're on stage, he said, especially when you're nervous and all sweaty palmed. Real drummers bring a whole bag of sticks to shows. He'd bought me 12 pairs, my lucky number, and a navy blue canvas bag to hold them. His way of proving he believed in me and in the band, in my commitment to turning nothing right into something real. I'm proud of you, you know, he'd said, and then he tapped his forehead against my forehead. He tapped his forehead against my forehead and smiled. By 7-ish, we were all at Isaac's, but so were a whole slew of kids from school I recognized, and a whole slew I didn't. Rabbit and Isaac and a man I assumed to be Philip Corey Thompson were waiting on the curb by the valet stand. The valet stand? When Beckett parked in front of one of the nicest houses I'd ever seen. I feel like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Beckett said, as we looked up at the sloped driveway toward the house, which was sat behind a plot lawn that was too green to seem real. There was a balcony on the top floor facing the street, and a group of kids in cocktail dresses and suits stood watching the road, or each other, probably. I spotted Jay and a few girls from my English class, too. But then Isaac was knocking on my window and opening the car door, and he became the only thing I could see. He wore a tuxedo, a real full-on tuxedo with a navy blue cummerbund and tie. "Hey, look, we match," he said when he saw my dress, and then he reached down to help me out of the car. I figured go big or go home, right? I actually kind of feel like a penguin or the maitre d' of a 5-star restaurant, but my dad talked me into it. It's my birthday party, and when else would I get to wear this ridiculous getup? And then he did that jaw-cracking thing, which for some reason made me feel better about being so late and so nervous about playing in front of all these people. Isaac introduced us to his dad, who seemed nice enough and not as scary as a man who used 3 names all the time could be. And then we headed inside to help Rabbit and Isaac finish setting up. The first floor was where they were throwing the party. There were bedrooms upstairs and a full basement below, Isaac said, and we plunged head on into the crowd, a shiny black lab waiting at the door. Isaac bent down and scratched behind the dog's ears. "This is Loki," he said. "And this, Loki," he said, "is the infamous Nothing Right." He told us his parents bought Loki in a last-ditch effort to save their marriage. But when things didn't work out, they decided the dog belonged in San Francisco with his dad, even though it broke his 4th-grade heart at the time. Who does that, you know? Give a kid a dog, then makes him leave it behind and move to the other side of the world? It was for the best, though, he said, because those first few trips back and forth were kind of rough on me, going between Paris and here and not having any friends in the city. It was good Loki was waiting for me every time I got off that plane. He showed us around, which took about 2 seconds because the first floor didn't actually have any walls and was this big sprawling space with the kitchen linked to the dining room, which opened to the main living room where we'd be playing. There was a bar set up at a gigantic counter island in the center of the kitchen area, and behind it, a man and woman in matching white button-downs and black pants poured drinks. I recognized the woman, Jane Watson, who used to cut her own bangs over the bathroom sink during lunch period. She'd been a senior when I was a freshman, and we'd been in the same art class, where she'd made the most amazing water pitcher I'd ever seen. When she got me staring, she smiled, and I waved. A handful of grown-ups mingled in the dining room area with Isaac's dad and a woman with long red hair, but for the most part, the crowd was our age and a little bit rowdy, drinking and eating from the bar and a food buffet that had been set up in the dining room. Isaac held out a ceramic bowl and said, "Keys," to Beckett, who was standing next to me. My dad figured someone or other would smuggle in booze, so at the end of the night, if you want to drive home, you have to get the keys from him. A pass his test kind of thing, he explained. Beck said, "Fair enough," and dropped Rabbit's keychain into the pile. It turned out one of Isaac's dad's friends from college was visiting from Los Angeles, where he played the drums in a 70s cover band, and by the time we got here, he and Isaac had already set up most of the equipment. "Hudson," he said, and held out his hand as we stood near the stage area, which was, just like Isaac said, in front of a wall of windows facing the most amazing view of the Golden Gate Bridge I'd ever seen. "Just let me know if you want me to adjust anything," he added. We were pretty close to being ready, so I sat at the drum set and tweaked the stands, the ride cymbal, the snare, and the hi-hat, trying to get everything to feel just like it felt at Maddie's for practice. But something was off balance. I counted backward from 12 as a crowd began forming in the living room, eyeing us. Rabbit was warming up, and Maddie was in the bathroom, and I watched, trying to hold down the vomit, as Beckett and Jay stood by the bar, their hands touching each other incessantly. Andrew Parker was there too, with his new girlfriend from the bus stop, and when he caught me looking at him, he gave me an exaggerated thumbs up and mouthed, "Good luck," which was kind of cheesy, but nice all the same. "What is this?" Maddie asked when she came back and was standing in front of us. "What is what?" Rabbit said. "This, you being on the right of me. You're always on the left," she said, her voice rising. "There's no plug on the left," he told her. "Not my fault, boss. I have to plug in, and that's where the socket is." But it won't feel right, she said. And he said, we've got no choice. Then Isaac's dad was there too, saying it would probably be a good idea if we got going. The music was supposed to start, he glanced at his watch, a while ago, and the neighbors had only agreed to loud noise until 11:30. Almost ready, I told him. Find an extension cord and move to my left, Maddie told Rabbit. There's no time, he said. This is fine. Here's the deal, I said, lowering my voice. This setup is different than how we practice, but this isn't practice. It's a real gig. So different is inevitable, and that's okay, because this is our chance. I paused, and we looked at the room where I bet Isaac had been right. About 150 people waited for us to begin. This is our chance to show them that we're good, really good enough to be here. I slid one hand into Maddie's and the other into Rabbit's, and then they did the same, so that we all held hands in a circle. I don't feel good, Maddie said, woozy-like and shaky. It's just nerves, I told her. Adrenaline. Adrenaline. We've got to use that nervous energy to show them how kick-ass we are. Next to me, Rabbit nodded, even though Maddie looked pretty pale all of a sudden. Your heart's just racing too fast, he said. My whole body is racing too fast. I told her to take a deep breath. Take 2, 3, 4 huge inhales. But she said, I don't think I can do this. You are doing this, I told her. You already are. And I pointed to the crowd. Look, they're waiting for us, for Nothing Right, which means we're already the band gigging at Isaac Thompson's birthday party. You're already doing it. I squeezed her hand and she whispered, 3, 2, 1. And then I kicked off my shoes because I always played barefoot when we practiced. And Rabbit pulled out his yo-yo and did a quick sleeper because that was his lucky trick, the first one he learned when he got sober. And Maddie blubbered her lips this weird way that made a funny motorboat sound because it was something she'd been doing since she was a little girl whenever she was nervous. I took one last deep breath and a long, hard look at both of them and said, okay, let's do this. And then we started playing.